that was awesome. I can tell we have some very practiced pledgers out there. It's really nice to hear everybody. Our first agenda item is correspondence. Do we have any tonight, Kristen?
We do not have any correspondence this evening.
Okay. Next would be comments from the public. If there were anyone that wanted to make comments, this would be the moment. All right, I don't see any takers. We'll move on to our superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Cody. I'd like to congratulate Tammy Lemmer and Dave Martell for being elected to the Hazlet Board of Education for 4-year terms, and this occurred last Tuesday. I'd also like to thank Rob Fowler this evening, who's been a great supporter of the Hazlet Public Schools for the last 8 years, as well as the Hazlet Public Schools and public education. So thank you, Rob, for everything that you've done.
My pleasure.
And then our fall musical this year is Damn Yankees, and it's going to be held on November 16th and 17th with a dress rehearsal on Thursday, November the 15th. Tickets are available on Hazlet's website for the November 16th and 17th performance. And then one other announcement, Chris Cody presented at the MASB conference this past week, and a couple of us had an opportunity to go down and watch Chris in action. And Chris, thank you for representing the Hazlet Public Schools in a very professional manner. So,
Thank you for you guys that came along and supported.
thank you.
Pleasure. Okay, we'll move on to discussion items. Our first one is our 2011-2012 District Audit, and we have Keith Feifel from our accounting firm, Maynard Christerison, here. Come up and talk over the audit.
Hi, my name is Keith Feifel. I'm a senior manager with Maynard Christerison, CPA firm that does the district's audit. We've already met with the Finance Committee and went through the financial statements in detail, so I'm going to give you the brief Cliff Notes version here tonight. Do you all have a copy of the audit report? Okay. On pages 4 and 5, we issued a standard unqualified audit opinion. That's the opinion that you get every year. It basically says that we believe your financial statements are fairly stated. Pages 6 through 13 is the management discussion and analysis. That portion of the statements Steve Cook puts together, and that basically tells the story of the year from management's perspective and the changes. I won't go through that too much in detail. The part that's significant from the management discussion analysis is page 13, which is factors bearing on the district's future. So it's kind of some things that are currently going on with the district and anticipated changes going forward. Then we get into the financial statements. The first 3 pages of the financial statements are your full accrual financial statements. So those would be pages 15 through 17. Essentially, if Hazlet were treated as a business, this would be the full accrual basis. So the primary difference there would be capital assets and long-term debt are on the books at that level. When we get into the fund level, that's pages 18 and 19. That's what you guys typically see when you think of the general fund. So if you look at page 19, the general fund, where you ended up, was a fund balance of $2,198,392. So as of June 30, there was $2.1 million in fund balance, and then there's different categories of that fund balance. Unassigned fund balance is the $2,040,797. If you look at that on a per pupil basis, that's about $750 per student in fund balance. And as a percentage of general fund expenditures, it's approximately 8%. Typically what we see is about that level of fund balance at a number of our districts. The old metric used to be around 10 to 12% range to be a healthy fund balance level. With that, I guess I can go into some of the notes. On page 36, the district did borrow $1 million in state aid anticipation loan. Through this set-aside program, that was considered defeased at year-end, so there was no debt outstanding in state aid. On page 38, I have to commend the board on refinancing an advanced refunding of the district's debt. That resulted in cash flow savings of $948,000 to the taxpayers. So the board refinanced debt, and that saved the taxpayers in long-term debt. And that'd just be strict cash flow savings. If you discount that back, at present value, it's over $900,000 on a present value basis in savings to the taxpayers. Page 47 is the district's budget to actual page. District did a very good job budgeting. Overall, on total revenue and total expenditures, the variances were less than 0.5%. So on $25 million of revenue, you're within 0.5%. That's a very, very good job of budgeting. So, to get into the single audit, page 75, we audited the child nutrition cluster. That'd be the school lunch programs. We had no findings, no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies with that program. So there was nothing to report there. It looked like the district is doing a good job with the school lunch program. And with that, I guess, I think that's all I had to cover. We definitely appreciate all the work that Steve and Deb do. We think they do a great job, and we appreciate being of service. Any questions from the board?
I don't know as much as a question, but kind of the bottom line as you go through this, it looks like it's almost a perfect report, where the financial statements are presented fairly, which is the perfect score on that.
Yep, that's correct.
But then no material weaknesses, basically
That would be a perfect score on the single audit, yes, correct.
so it sounds like what we've got is a well-functioning business office, and the financial statements are in good shape.
That's correct.
Well, Dave, we were actually off by around 50 basis points. So there is room for improvement.
Yep.
I would say that was pretty good.
And in comparison to many other districts, our 50 points off is probably quite exceptional.
Yes, begrudgingly so.
Well, it's in the right direction too. You know, on expenditures, didn't go over budget on expenditures, came in less. So it's, if you're gonna be off, you wanna be off in that direction. Not going over budget on expenditures, so.
For those of us that really don't have a mind that works in basis points, that 0.5% brings to me is quite extraordinary. I'm totally amazed every time they do that. It's so accurate on the projections. Appreciate you're here, Keith. Can't take the opportunity though to also thank Steve and Deb and the staff for pulling that off again, being so extraordinary.
Well, on top of it, you think they're pulling it off while they're managing the finances for 2 districts, too.
That's true. That's the second year operating with the contract with Williamson.
Right.
Anything that we should know that we haven't asked you or that you haven't presented along the way?
You know, I didn't mention the district's situation with long-term debt. Right now, you're borrowing from the school loan revolving fund of about $1 million. Based on your current principal and interest payments required, you're required to make. Assuming you have the same tax base and the same millage rates, and that remains constant, right now, you'd be projected to get out of that school loan revolving fund in 2015. So, and basically where I get that from is looking at the principal and interest payments required. That'd be on page 39. So 39, you could see in 2015, the principal and interest payments dropped down to 3.7 million. Right now, your current debt fund property tax revenue is 4.2 million. So that would be the year where you actually have an excess and start being able to pay back into the school loan revolving.
So we're not out of it.
You're not out of it
2015,
completely,
we're
but
no
you could
longer
start.
borrowing, we're just starting to pay back.
Correct, you would start paying back, yeah.
There's that chart, there's a chart that Steve had.
Yep, he has a chart that shows the same thing in a graphic
And a
form
graph
where
for
you'll
us that
start
don't
paying
think
back
in numbers, right? Don, take a look at that page. I know in years past, there've been, sometimes you let us know that there are rule changes and other things that we'll be
Yep.
looking forward. Is there anything that,
Yep, in the footnotes, we do have a section for new accounting pronouncements. That would be pages 44 and 45.
anything that's,
Pages, GASB 62 through 65 are primarily cosmetic changes. The big change is gonna be GASB 68. And that doesn't become effective until 2015, so that's a long ways out. But I ran some calculations based on a district Hazlitt size. The net unfunded pension liability that you would have to accrue would be about $30 million. And that would be on your full accrual statement, so that'd be like page 16 of the audit, the full accrual basis statements. Just based on projections of what we know now, that would be the liability that you would have to accrue. So that's a big change coming down in 2015.
And that would be only on the district-wide financials, not on the fund.
Correct. That wouldn't affect the fund level at all. That's just your government-wide financial statements.
And I know there are some entities, including the one that I am employed by, who question that to a certain extent. I think the GASB says that somebody has to report it. The old days of the state doesn't report it in the financial statements and the school districts don't. GASB, which is the governing standards board for our financial statements, is saying that somebody has to. And because the state's required by the Constitution to pay the benefits, we're saying that the state needs to record it. But if the state, in their infinite wisdom, decides not to, then individual districts will have to do that.
So that will be fought out between now and 2000.
Yep.
And the community colleges are in
And
the
it may
same
be resolved.
position we are, but for them, they can't rely on the state for their debt ratings, like we rely on the state for our debt ratings. So they're much more interested in making sure the state picks it up as opposed to us. So we end up paying for the amounts that are necessary, but the state's required by the Constitution to make the payments.
Well, if I understand that right, and you guys understand it far better than I do, both Keith and Steve, and David, and Mr. Basis Point. But as I understand it, that isn't really a change in the actual existing financial condition. Am I right about that? That shortfall exists. It exists as we're sitting here today. And we've got these unfunded pensions. It's just that it hasn't been properly recognized so far. I don't mean to minimize that because I think that's a huge liability that's out there. But in terms of anything that this district is doing or a difference in its actual liability, it's an already existing situation. Am I right about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a true statement. It's a condition that exists, and that $30 million is just recognizing it on the financial, if that's ultimately what we're required to do by the accounting standards. So, and I didn't point that out, on page 42, there is we show a chart where it has your pension expense, and you can see that has just been rising. I mean, 2010 was $2.4 million, and 2012 you're at $3.2 million. So in a couple of years alone, just with the increase in rates, it's a $800,000 increase in expense.
So the practical effect of recognizing that liability on the financials.
Practical effect, it's just going to impact the government-wide. The first couple statements, it won't impact you at the fund level at all. Where it will impact you at the fund level is depending on what they do with those rates to try to fund that.
Right.
And there's some measures there to try to hold that rate constant at 24. And so that's where you'd be impacted at the fund level, is to how they're going to try to solve that problem with the liability.
Okay. Anybody else?
I just want to make a note that the financial statements of action will be posted on the website
Yep.
on tomorrow, so if anybody really wants to read them, they can. But we're required by the budget transparency
Great.
to do that. So we actually have all past year audits back on there too. So I wanted to wait till the board had the full presentation before actually putting it on the website. So it'll be out there.
Thanks.
Keith, thank you to you and Bruce.
Yep, thank you, appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very
Take care,
much.
guys.
All right, thanks. Thank you.
And then then we'll be asked to accept that at the next meeting?
The audit.
Or have to do
Yes,
that?
yes.
Okay, 2 weeks.
Yep. Okay, great. Well, now the boring stuff's over, right, guys? So I guess we have iPads in the classroom, and not sure who is, Mrs. Lindbergh is gonna come up first.
Good evening. Murphy's really excited to be here tonight to talk to you about iPads in the classroom. We have 17 iPads. That's what we're starting with. They were funded by Hazlitt Foundation, the Murphy PTO, and then some school funds that I had last year. And At this point, we've got them in the office. Teachers check them out on a daily basis. They might check them out for an hour or for the morning. Sometimes they might check out 4, sometimes they check out all of them, depending on what they're gonna do. We found that it's a great and exciting tool for the kids to use, and just to enhance their learning on all the subject areas that they're working with. Mrs. Mahon is here for 5th grade, Mrs. Moore for 4th grade, and Mrs. Dowlins for 3rd grade. Before I turn it over to Mrs. Moore, who's gonna go first, I want you to think back to when you were in elementary school. And we all learned about the planets and the sun and the stars. And I just want you to think about what you learned, how you learned it, what you can visualize in your mind right now. And one of the applications that you'll see tonight is called Star Walk. You've got an iPhone or an iPad, you can bring it up on your, bring it up on either. And it's a pretty cool little app that our 5th graders have used, and that I was able to teach to one of the 3rd grade classes, so I know a lot about that one. So enjoy. We have iPads for all of you. The kids will be passing them out, and just enjoy.
I have 4 students that are coming to share. They're going to pass out the iPads to you. When I was growing up, my dad was a builder, and in our garage, there was every possible tool you'd ever want was in the garage. And when he wanted to get really specific in making the cabinets and stuff, he had a specific tool. Well, if you were to look at these iPads, you would see that this is really just another tool that I'm using now in my classroom. Except this tool can do far more than just one thing. It is going to cover a lot of areas. And so the children are going to share, do you want to go stand? The adults, they are positioned to help you as adults, because they pretty much at times can help me too. But they are going to share 2 of the apps that we use. So I'm going to hand this over to Carter. You go right in front there. Okay. So, Carter, you want to start them and make.
Someone got there before us.
Sorry, I'm way ahead of you.
And you don't have a helper. How come they're getting noises and we're not? Okay.
You haven't gotten there yet.
I did?
Slide your finger to the left, each page of the practice. Students will read
back.
Some pole snails go hunting. They like to burrow.
It was Olivia, she told me I should see it. How do I get out of
And
it?
show them to, Carter, like if you touch on certain things, he's on, it's just a little delayed what's happening with what he's showing. But when you touch on it, then it can give added information. And one of the big pushes we have now is nonfiction text. And, you can see that they include all of the nonfiction, structure, so that we can be teaching that with the children. But it also includes, like, you've heard the videos that give added information as well. Okay.
Some pole snails go hunting. They like to burrow into the sand.
Wait just a second. You have to get to that site. So you're gonna need to go back to the
Go back to the main
main
page.
page, yeah?
Okay, good.
Okay.
That's not the main page.
Math? Math?
We're gonna hit apps.
So see where he's up there, yep.
Are we supposed to hit this? What are we supposed to hit?
So you hit the math below.
Oh, okay.
MEP,
Okay. Okay, tell him which one. Oh, yeah. It's down right there. Okay. So he wants you to go to My Math app.
Oh, oh.
It's just the math.
My math app? Okay.
Give him time. All right.
Okay.
What do you think he is?
Buying something, I didn't really intend to do that.
Notice so that the clock's going, one of the things we are teaching them is math fluency and to get it done as fast as they can.
You have turned your volume off.
There's.
Now, can we just do a wrong score to see what it'll do? Will it tell us we're wrong?
I got one wrong.
This is 56.
He had the right answer.
You have easy ones.
I am doing addition, multiplication.
Okay, and you can go back by hitting home.
We want you to go to the home site and then you can see that there's an, advanced as well.
Oh, well, are we ready for advanced? Okay.
And then what do you want to do?
No, we know that, don't we? Ooh,
He's giving us more instructions.
Okay, so then the children can go on and try out different math apps as well. Well, iPad. It's not, okay, I have an iPad, how can I get my curriculum to fit into it? It's, I have curriculum, how can do I need to use the iPad, will that help the children learn more? So it's a tool. That's all I think that it is. It's a tool. And so this, when I teach earth movements, I have a lot of information that they read. And so this has, if I go to the learn, the children then would be able to read everything I'm teaching on earth movements. It also has information that I would be teaching for the geography lesson as well. They would read it. If I were to go to plate tectonics, they would read it. There is they then could understand it and just spend time reading it. And then when they're all done, they would go back to the main menu and then they could practice. And the practice would help them learn more information. There's questions, there's matching, there's trivia. And then I could have them, when it's all done, have them go to a quiz. So then they're learning this information, they are practicing what they learn, and then they're quizzed on it. Then I can take that information, type up a short mini quiz and see, okay, really, how did you do by using this iPad? And then that's part of my curriculum grade, my grade that I would give them as well.
So this practice and quiz, is it after you've gone through all of that material?
Yes, all of that material, but there's just one page that they read, and it would probably take me 2 days to get through it all with them. For us right now, we are sharing the iPads, so it would be 2 children sharing, which I don't have a problem with. One person reads, the other person listens, and then they flip-flop, which is what we actually do during our reading time too, with the reading books that we read. But this, what I like about this is that it gives me more practice with what I'm teaching, the curriculum that I'm actually teaching. I'll do the same thing. There's economics, there's electricity, magnets, and so I can go and see, okay, what I want, the material I'm teaching, can the iPad help benefit the students? If I'm not doing it just to use the iPad, I'm using it as a tool, and that's, really what we're looking at today with the iPads. Okay? All right, fourth graders, we're going to go sit down and we're going to let Mrs. Downs play. You have done a great job. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, fourth graders. Oh, no, we don't do Angry Bird. I heard that. No.
Tobias asked that question.
Yeah.
Now, would you know the answer to this one?
I don't even know what the question is.
This was the superintendent 270 million years ago.
And it picked up from there? Oh, I thought it had to sit right by. All right, let's go over here.
Know that. Okay, now I think it's on back.
Because then there's the microphone. Oh, perfect.
This is one. Yep. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
All right, you guys can go and kind of stand between and then help them because they're gonna need your passwords.
We're gonna need your help. Okay.
We do, when we're doing our reading, our Pearson reading, we do reading centers so that the kids come and read with me in small groups, and before they come to read with me, they'll get onto, we use it during reading on websites. So the kids have practiced it before because we've done it in the technology lab on the regular computers to get them used to going through the steps of finding our website. And then once we got the iPads, we started doing it in small groups, and they get the iPads and they read the books on our website. So they're going to show you how to get to our website and then where the books are, and Julie's going to show you one of the books that they've read. Yep, so go ahead.
Before we read in small groups with Miss Downs, we read the book on the iPad. To find the book, we get into Safari, and that's the bottom corner.
And there, I think most of them are online. If you're not online, if you hit the square in the bottom, it'll take you back to the home page, and then you hit Safari.
You're there, Tobias.
this is the tricky part for some of the kids, because when you click on Safari, sometimes the website comes right up, and sometimes they have to search for it. So Julie's gonna tell you how we search for it, even though it came up automatically on hers, because they know to look for the shortcuts. Like a lot of the kids are aware of that, and they would see, okay, we don't have to do anything else. But some of, when it doesn't just come up, then they have to go into the Google search and find it. Yep, show them the Google search.
So you go into Google search and it might already be there, and if it's not there, you type in H and it'll be already there.
Yep, so you're typing in the H for Hazlet Public Schools, and then they see it up there and they click on that.
And then you go to Hazlet Public Schools HPS home. Then we go to for students.
Oh, that's fine. That'll work. Yep. The Pearson Success Net is in two spots. It's on for students, or it's on, I put a link on our class website so they could find it easier. So if you go to Mrs. Dolan's website and then the iPad links, it's there, or it's in the for students. It does take longer.
So now you click on Pearson Success Net.
Well, then they gotta catch up. If you went through Hazlet Public Schools, you'd go to Our Schools, Murphy, Teacher Pages, 3rd grade, Downs. And it is a lot of steps, but then the link's there and the kids practice it, so they know.
So they
it.
know, yeah. This is where you need to.
Yep, they're gonna put in their password for you.
Okay, now we put in our passwords.
When I do it, I always have to make it bigger, because my fingers, when I try to hit 3rd grade, I end up hitting all of them. So, if you spread it out. Yes. Julie, what's your username?
22. Capital A.
That part tricks them because you have to do the capital A. And
You don't have anything in your to-do list.
T-O-N.
Well, this is first being broadcast on TV here.
Yeah, they can't get any information through that. And all of the kids have the same password, and we keep it that way. So when kids come to me to read, if they can't remember their password, I know their usernames, or I can figure it out because it's all set up. So it's really.
Okay.
We're giving all these
Yes,
Once we get on the Pearson Success page, we scroll up with our finger and we go to the story of the week. And right now it's Iguana Takes a Ride.
Story of the week.
It's Iguana Takes a Ride.
And it is a lot of steps, but they have it down. And we sit in groups, so they read it to themselves and then they read it to me, so I can walk them through. And then when you scroll down, she's a little bit ahead of some of you. If you scroll down to the bottom of that page, you'll see the list of stories. And she clicked on Iguana Takes a Ride, and then that's right from the Pearson program, and it's a part of our reading program. And so they can get on it here, and then they also can get on it at home too. So once they get used to how to find it.
They can do it at home.
Yep.
So this is just part of the content that's with the curriculum.
Yep, this is our curriculum and the content.
So you
that's
could
in
pull
our
it up on the
username.
smart board if you were in the classroom.
Yep, I pull it up on the smart board, they do it on the iPads, they do it in the tech lab, they can do it at home. And I like having the iPads because then they can do it in the small groups. And I don't have to take the whole class to the technology lab, and it's a enough, you know, I can use 4 or 5 of the iPads and they read it together.
Yeah.
And then they're ready when they come to read to me, they've seen the text and they're ready to go. So it's a great way to use the curriculum in the resources that we already have, and it brings them right to the kids in the classroom. Good job, Julie. Thank you. And then Tyler's gonna come and he's gonna show you one of the other things that they use on the website to when we're in reading centers, and it's an assignment that I can give them, or if they get done with the story and I'm still reading with another group, then they know that this is the next step. And I have these made up for them too, so if they forget the steps, how to get there, and I can't help them, they can look on that. And he's gonna show you though, it's still on the internet, and it is tricky to get to because it's they have to search it again. But he'll walk you through the search. So you can go ahead, and if it's a tab that's already up there, you can click on the Hazlet Public Schools if it's there, or if you click on the X to close that book that he's reading, that he has open, and then it takes you back into the login, and then you can just hit the back arrow. And hit the back arrow. And it will take you to the back to the Hazlet webpage, and you can go to, from there, you can get to our classroom, our schools, Murphy, and he'll take you through, because this one is the Fun Brain. So we can do with our schools. This. Yep. If you started off at my webpage, then it might be a tab up top. And it's interesting to see the kids that are more experienced with the iPads look for those tabs and they can find them and they, oh, I don't have to search again. And then sometimes the kids start all over fresh each time, but it only takes a minute or two to get to the website. You're going a little too, sweetie. If you go, once you get to Mrs. Dallon's homepage, the iPad's links on the bottom. And if you click on that, it'll take you to Fun Brain. Click on that. I took you back, yeah. And then if you, once you see this, you click on the Fun Brain. This is a fun website because they can get books online that are in the library. There's also a lot of math games on this website too, and they do work on the iPad. Some games don't because you need flash for a lot of the games, but on this website you don't. You can use the reading or the math games. So go to the reading ones for me. And then Tyler's going to show you Grammar Gorillas. You scroll down and you click on Grammar Gorillas. And then you can choose, depending on what we're doing in literacy, they can choose beginner, which is just nouns and verbs, or advanced, which is all the different parts of speech. And then it's practice with, again, what's right in our curriculum as part of our reading program. Go ahead.
How you doing?
The class is going on.
I'd like to be back at school again.
This group hasn't done very good, so
And then they can play this game. And it's amazing to see the kids, just how engaged they are when they have the iPads in front of them. Because if I'm explaining to them the difference between a noun and a verb, it's far more interesting on Grammar Gorillas than it is coming out of me.
So I know that, again, this is some of the stuff that you could do on the smart board. How do you find that from your perspective of teaching, whether you're teaching it to the whole group on the smart board or they've got this in their hands?
It's hugely different because in the smart board, when it's the whole class trying to do one thing at a time, then it's easier to tune out. When they have it in front of them and they're the ones controlling it, then they're totally engaged. And it's also helpful with when we can do more small group work. So when I teach a math lesson, I can have kids on the iPads, I can have kids doing part of the math curriculum, and I can have kids sitting with me with one-on-one.
So it's a station, kind of.
Mm-hmm. So it can be used in many different ways, and it's engaging. fascinated by it, even watching you guys and turning it around. And, you know, the whole first lesson was that, pushing the buttons and turning it every which way and making it big and small. And it's just interesting to them.
So did you have a curriculum of how to teach them how to use an iPad, or did you just have to?
We just did it.
Just did it.
We did it because I know it's gonna enhance the curriculum, so I wanted to make sure they knew how to use the iPad before we got into the curriculum part of it.
So how many kids do you usually have at a time with one of them?
I have been trying to have, I try to get 8 and then have one child on it at a time. And now as more and more people are starting to use them, sometimes I'm getting 4 and have 2 kids on one. But they're really good if they'll take turns with it, and the games are set up where they can each have a turn, and they don't have to sit and wait for somebody to finish. They can go back and forth. So, and the same with the reading, they can read it together, or they can go back and forth.
You know, and really, part of what is a side bonus to this is you're teaching social skills. Having to work with a team, yeah.
And the turn taking and the self-control, because
Sure.
they all want to click there, and sometimes you'll see all their fingers going, and like, guys, you can't all have your fingers on there at the same time. But they learn how it's not going to work that way.
Yeah, you're a team.
So that's ours.
Cool.
Good job.
Thank you. Thanks, third graders.
Oh. We won't keep them, we'll give them back.
Do you have one? Rob has one, and I don't like this. I'm still an old
You can or you can leave them, either way. However's best for them.
Get them all up here. Yeah. Chris, can we get them all up here and take a picture of them? Probably would link that. Then we do that. Because they're gonna take these away from us. This is great. You know, I think probably with many of us, when we were in school learning, there were no computers. They weren't invented. There were typewriters when we got a little older, that were manual typewriters, things that you guys have never even seen before.
Plus, I can't do anything else.
Are we getting help with this
We're
one too?
dinosaurs.
You are.
Real ones.
Yeah.
It's because it's hooked up to
That's not the basis points.
Hi, I'm Sean Mahan, and
sorry.
tonight we have fifth graders representing Murphy fifth grade. We're using it in all curricular areas in fifth grade, but tonight we're going to show you some of the things we've done in science. We've modified our Delta kit, Earth, Moon, and Sun, and incorporated a lot of the things we can do on the iPad into that curriculum that we already have, and so it's been a great tool. So, Rodney's gonna start us off.
Hi, Rodney. Hi, Miss I'm Ashley. Dear fifth graders from Murphy, thank you for inviting us here. We're excited to show you a few of the things that we've gone through in our science unit about astronomy. We would like you to take a very short quiz. We'll help you find the answers to the questions on the iPad.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Science was my thing.
Is mine any, they're all easy? Oh, wait and see how we answer.
Yeah,
You know what? You're not gonna do so good on this one.
Thank you.
neither is Tobias Tim.
Thank you, dear.
This does not look easy.
Is this a take-home?
Is this an open book?
It's open iPad, yeah.
Name?
Oh, wow.
You already got yours.
We all have the same
You
question.
know, I could put the sunrise and sunset now, but they didn't say what part of the globe. So we can get that.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be going. You're supposed to wait for your instructions.
If you will please take a look on your iPad and find the app called Star Walk.
Star
Is everyone's Star Walk opened up? If not, raise your hand and one of us will help you. Okay.
Wow. Cool.
I like that.
Someone has. I think they turned our volume off over on this side.
I'm good. He knows it.
Okay, so. Whoa.
How'd you get that? Oh, no. Okay, now we will show you how to use Skylight on Star Walk. See the icon on the right, press the menu button. It has 3 lines at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Now touch the Skylight icon.
Oh, it's done.
Ashton, did you go?
Well, let's wait, let's see if it pulls up.
Today's Are we doing today's?
Well, we're going to help walk you through it.
Okay. Yeah, what?
We're gonna help you do all the sections.
Screen. Good, Tobias is already writing the answers.
Stumped on yesterday, but I got a feeling to be moving on. I think it's gonna be right here. I think it's right here.
Okay,
This is the other side
the
of
screen is coming up that you have, but we're gonna go ahead and walk you through. And we'll help you
Good.
through with that, and we'll try to reboot it.
Please find the moon phases for today's date and the percentage of illumination on your screen and fill the information in on your quiz. Please go to the date at the top right-hand corner arrow. The date on the one time to the left to get to yesterday's date.
Yes. Okay, we doing it the right way?
Not 26.
Kind of a bummer to skip through here how few daylight hours we have.
There we go.
How am I doing?
We lose 3 minutes a day?
So now behind you,
Okay, oh yeah,
Yep.
okay.
November 11th.
Oh, I got it. So,
So this is showing the, of what the building looks like, right? So that's what it looks like on the left.
Length of the day.
What is the name of it on the other side of the earth?
back on today now?
Oh, I am on today.
Okay, so go back to today.
Probably not supposed to be. That's where I am.
7:24 and 18 for your answer. You have to go back to yesterday.
Not change it.
For yesterday.
To see what.
Yeah. Isn't that?
Okay.
Yours is different than mine.
Go the right turn to see what it's gonna be too. Wow.
Then we go into the
Yours is different than mine. Does that make
I
sense?
have my own little world.
Now, we are on the same date for yesterday, but we have different sunrises and sunsets. It's interesting.
Was that a different latitude?
I'm in East Lansing. Where are you?
Canada.
You're in Canada.
How did you know that?
Pretty good, eh?
And then lower left-hand corner. So like you please write down the sunrise and sunset times for yesterday.
I'm sorry, Michelle, could you repeat
There you
that?
go.
Thank you.
Look at the sun in the lower left-hand corner. Please write down the sunrise and sunset times for yesterday.
For yesterday. And we could be in different parts of the country. No, your answer is right for Canada, and mine is right for East Lansing.
Where are you?
Well, I was wondering where.
They,
Set for.
kids checked it.
I'm 5'8".
Want to show Mrs. Jones? To the certain country.
You're further west? East.
Yes, you are.
Where are you? Because
I'm in East Lansing.
I'm in East Lansing, and we got different, oops, I'm gonna go skyline.
Now go back to yesterday.
Yeah, I have 723.
I had 7:24
Yeah,
and 5:18.
That was such a good idea to bring your camera.
So we're off by a minute.
You're going earlier than you do, I guess. What do you have for sunset, sunrise? 4:30.
Ashton.
Huh.
Still won't work. Next, we will go to the night sky, touch the menu button in the bottom right-hand corner. Please make sure the camera is uncovered on the back of your iPad. This shows you the sky as it actually is right now.
CYGNUS. And then you have an enter. Oh, then you just click it again. Okay, and there's Cygnus.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay, just go around it.
You may need to stand up and move your iPad around to see what is currently in the sky. Find a planet or constellation. Now point the iPad towards the floor. You're now seeing the sky on the other side of Earth. Write down the name of a constellation you see.
You'll see a line right there. Put below it, that's.
Oh, okay.
You'll see the line right there is what we're seeing right now. Find here for class.
So this is the other side. Okay. Okay, okay. So this would be, these would be constellations that are seen. I think that's.
Let's go back.
Satellite.
Because I thought I was had to sit here with lawyers before.
Why don't you, so everybody can see out there.
You know,
So what Rodney's doing, you can see on the screen, is he, anywhere he points, that's what he's seeing in the sky. And go ahead, point on the other side of the earth, point down for them so they can see. So those constellations are on the other side of the earth.
That is
Straight through the
amazing.
earth, other side of the sky. Okay.
but this lets you really understand all these names. I mean, how many times did you sit with your parents and have them say, this is that, my dad's in the Coast Guard, he always say, okay, this is what it looks like, I never could see it. Oh, that's right.
Remember when Pluto was a planet?
Now for our last.
Sorry, Steve, even if it's your financial.
Now for our,
Okay, we will listen to you now.
now for our last question. Press the X and the button, the bottom right hand corner, and touch the calendar icon.
All right.
I got it there.
Wow.
Please find the next total. Please find the date of the next total solar eclipse. Write the date on the continent where it will be seen on your quid. If you scroll on the calendar, you can see all the astronomical events of the year. Try it if you'd like to.
Next total solar.
That's the total eclipse.
In Australia.
Hot tomorrow, where it will be able to be viewed.
And then what Rodney's done is if you touch the total solar eclipse, it will show you where it is in the sky and where it's going to be, so. And of course, the moon is casting a shadow on the earth, so you see the darkened side of the moon.
Okay. So there, you can see the satellites too. Do I see the Hubble?
Satellites,
That's awesome.
galaxies.
Oh, so am I looking at the Milky Way?
This will take us back to where we were, right? No. Like that one.
It's very cool.
It's like is it tomorrow?
And Rodney's just scrolling through some of the different things, some information that's.
Yeah. We've got time to get there.
We will not pick up your quizzes. We hope you enjoyed the iPads as much as we have it, and that you learned something about something. Will not pick up your quizzes. Hope you enjoyed the iPads as much as we have, and that you learned something new about astronomy and the iPads today. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Now, to turn it off, we're gonna go, do you know how to,
Actually, when you close the thing,
I don't. How do you turn it off? Now, to your parents, how do you put this?
this is a magnet.
Hey, Mike. That's her name.
That'll turn it.
These are really, really good.
Boys and girls, if you want to come right up front, we're gonna get a picture with the school board, so you can stand right kind of in front and
Yeah.
stand up on that.
This was really cool.
Great job.
Yeah, this is great.
So right along the horseshoe, boys and girls, and then face Mrs. Moore.
This was great. Just terrific. Absolutely, yeah.
Well, we can stand right behind the school board members.
Yep.
Does that work, Mrs. Moore?
Do I have to give it back to you now?
Stand right
Thank
behind.
you for your help. Get up there and get
Take a picture with the iPads because they take really nice photos.
Oh, we can move. I gave it away. Yeah, we'll be down by you guys.
So, Rodney, we're gonna come out this way.
You sit in the seat. There you go.
I think we
We
sit.
sit in the seat.
Oh, I like that.
You guys get in.
I get responsibility.
Right there.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yeah, but
Hey, Diane.
Get a seat over here, guys. Come on over.
Right, it's very front. It's very front. Right.
There you go.
Up front. Up front. There you go.
pictures where and then
You gotta scooch up.
you'll film
You're so they're even easier. Here you go. Both sit.
There's your future student rep right there.
Tobias, get up here.
I'm gonna do one more. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. This is.
They've got the iPads. They're taking all the pictures. Oh, you did fabulous.
Good job.
He didn't have an iPad in his pocket.
Michael, why aren't you in here?
Awesome.
Right there. There's a big spot for you, right there.
Great job.
All right, very well done.
Okay, did everybody get? Thank you very much. It was good to meet all of you.
Come back again and present next time.
Bye. You did a great job. Thank you.
Ashton.
You know, how many of you have iPads? See, I haven't gotten one yet, and I keep debating, but
I just ordered a mini.
they're pretty exciting.
Can we ask you, can we ask a few questions once they all, yeah. If we could just ask you, Diane, I think that's fine. We can just ask you. Just ask you. Sure. So. Oh, I was just curious, so, I mean, that was really cool
You
to
want
see
some
how
water,
they were
Lori?
different in every grade. And how each teacher's just, like, you know, like Sandy was saying, found the way that it fits, you know, with what. Do you, I mean, is this something, so this is third, fourth, and fifth, so are second not using them? Or,
Second has not gotten into them as fast or as much as third, fourth, and fifth grade.
We have to keep in mind, we just got them in September.
okay,
Yeah.
right.
And you've got a lot of startup at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And as it was, we had to meet and all that, so, you know, just to get it going, I think we'll start to see it more as time goes on.
Do you, I mean, when you read about it in the paper, when everybody makes a big deal about a school district getting iPads, they're talking about kindergarten. Is that, I mean, but this seems that wherever you get them, you're finding a way to make it appropriate for
Yeah, I mean,
that,
there is just a lot of different ways that they can be incorporated into the curriculum. And as I think Sandy talked about it, it's a great tool to use if you can find an app or information that works with the curriculum. Not to just use the iPads, but what works with the curriculum.
Right.
And if you think about our building, we have, 2 through 5, we have children who are learning letters.
Yeah.
And letter sound correspondence. And and there can be, groups, when they're that young, kids, second graders, when they're that young, you've got kids starting there and you've got kids that are reading. But the iPads give you an opportunity, it's really easy to differentiate. Because I can find an app and I can put, these 3
Right.
kids on this, and then I can all the way up to reading at or above grade level.
It seems so much more efficient in terms of being able to kind of go between things like that, in terms of explaining it and putting groups of people together. It just seems to me it's just so much more efficient.
Provided they've done all this work of what's already there. I mean, that seems to me, I bet it's a tremendous amount of work for the teachers to either create the ease of access to something that's online or find the.
Well, you know how it started, because you've got teachers who've got iPads at home.
Uh-huh.
And then over the summer, the ISD offered classes
Oh.
with iPads. And that was a day-long, 6-hour class, and showed the teachers different free apps.
Okay. That they knew were gonna be
Right.
appropriate in certain contexts.
So we had reps from each grade level that went to that. I gave them an iPad, so second grade teachers downloaded things that were appropriate for second grade, and every grade did that.
Okay.
Are there apps that you'd like to have that you need to purchase? That because I heard when Sandy talked about a little bit about, they're a little more involved. Would that be helpful, or?
No, we have money, actually, we have money for that because the apps are not that expensive.
Okay.
Right now, we have probably 135 apps. Most of those were free. We probably spent $20 or $25 on apps. It's a minimal cost. Really, it is. But you've gotta, we need to consider what kids are coming to school with. A lot of kids have this technology at home. My own granddaughter, who is 4, she's been able to do the iPad, the iPhone, the computer, probably since she was, before she was 2. And kids are coming to school with this experience, and it's a different literacy experience. Because when you're using an iPad, things are going fast, and I don't have to wait for the rest of the class. Because I can learn it at my own rate, or if I need to slow down a little bit, I can take my time with it. But it's just another tool for us.
But one of the things too, Diane just went to a conference last week on a couple of principals and brought back information that we need to be teaching them using digital reading. And by 2014, 2015, they're going to be taking that on the computer. So we need to get their thinking, this is what you're going to be doing, even using the reading street material that we have, that gets them ready for that type of thinking. But it's just another, tomorrow Jean and I are going to a conference on how we can get them outside too. It's not like everything in my day is, okay, iPad. We take them outside and they have to sit there and do their journal writing outside. You just have to see that you're just using a tool, but it does get them engaged, and that's our goal.
Oh, yeah.
Engage the students all the
I mean,
time.
look at how engaged you all were.
Right.
Yeah.
It was fun watching you. The conference that Judy and I went to, it was on the Common Core, National Curriculum, and especially with reading. The emphasis was on reading for a day and a half, and several speakers talked about the Common Core test. That will be a computerized test starting in 2014. but one of the things the kids have to do is they will have they may have a test question and they will have to manipulate to that test question. I'll give you an example. Number line here, 3 or 4 fractions up above, and they will be asked to put those fractions in order on the number line. It's a 3rd grade question. So 1/2, 3/3, 6/2, and the kids will have to drag them down on the number line. Well, they have that kind of experience watching their teacher on the smart board, and the teacher asks Chris to come up and move it on the smart board. But that's only one child, and you know, the kids, it's actual practice with that. And some of those applications, I don't know if you showed the one, but there's applications on these iPads where the kids have to manipulate things. And that'll be part of, you know, what they're gonna need to do. They'll be given, text. And one of the differences in this test is they will absolutely have to prove how they know something. So if they have reading to do, they will have questions, and they will, you know, choose the right answer, but then they will be asked to go up and highlight where in the text did you find the answer. So they will go in and highlight that. Even if it's a question where you have to infer the answer, what in that text
Gave you
gives
that idea.
the, you know, your answer that you are inferring? What are the clues?
Sandy, I asked a couple of your students if they had iPads at home. Any sense of how many of your students in your classroom have an
I would
iPad?
say I know for sure 1/4 of the kids do.
Okay.
They are using them, because when I say, do you know how to turn it off? Oh, yeah, Mr. Moore, got it, you know, and do you know how to do this or that? They're there, which helps because then they help the other students.
So how many of them do you have again?
We only have 13.
13, then we have 4 more. 3 of them are dedicated to our special ed departments, and 1 is dedicated to our RTI program.
And then so far, what's been the wear and tear on them, or any issues with maintenance, or what? Just they.
Kids are totally respectful with them. They are totally respectful, and we have rules and procedures that we have come up with for our school teachers. You know, they have to sign them out. The time they're signing them out, when they're sign them back in.
But it is something that we are going to always have to address, because I can't be watching the children all the time. Are you going to stay, because you can see they can go on Safari, they can go on the internet.
Yeah.
And so I listened to other teachers that went to the conference on the McCall last year, and he was saying, it's gonna happen. And so you address it, you give them that warning, and then you deal with it. And if they're going to abuse it, then okay, then it's taken away. Just like with anything else.
Right.
And we just kind of gotta be a little wise. But I'm in the 4th grade now, Bart wouldn't have this, but I have tattletales. Yes, I'm thrilled. You know, I'm Mrs. Moore, I'm thrilled. Do you? Oh, good, I mean,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, so that's just a plus, you know?
Oh, yeah.
I can't be watching them all the time, but it is a matter of designing your classroom to respect the students, respect their property, and respect yourself. And so that's what you really work at as a teacher too.
And you know, we do that all the time. You
With
know,
everything,
you
right.
respect
Right.
the school property, you respect each other, and it's been great with them.
So if you had more, would there be a demand for it? Would be used?
Absolutely. I mean, we will have more. We will have more. We're determined.
What do you see? What do you see a set for a classroom? Is that what you would
Well,
like?
that would be ideal, but we don't.
Or a grade, or?
What I'd like to see is each classroom has 6. And then we have a cart. We were able to buy a cart too, because you have to be charging these all the time. To have at least 2 carts in the building, so then the whole class, each cart has 30 iPads in them. So then a whole class set is in that cart. But if I had 6 in my own classroom available to me throughout the day, then it helps me to break it down into small groups. And I can have half the class, right now I have half the class reading I get them going with their small groups, and then I do the other half of the class where I'm teaching them how to summarize or something else. So they share 6, is usually what they're doing.
What's our cost? Per unit cost?
They're about $4.99. We get about the same price that you get at the store. So the third generation iPad is $4.99. If you get it in a pack of 10, they give you a $20 break for iPads, of course.
There's Sam's Club and Target are going at $4.50 though. But right now, I'm asking my parents to just give me box tops. So all the box tops I have, I've already raised $218 in box tops. And that goes right into my classroom. And so then I'll have that money to use as well.
Why not $199?
It might be like a Kindle Fire or something, but no, or-
So we do not get any type of price break ordering bulk
Not with
amounts
Apple, no.
for
20
schools.
for even if you buy a class pack of 10.
Okay, okay. I know my daughter wrote a grant for iPads. Is that something that would be feasible? Because I don't even know how she did, but it was a grant that she wrote for iPads that she got for her class.
Yeah, in Colorado.
Out in Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are grants. We have, and honestly, we haven't looked at that yet.
But I know that was at no charge that she got that, but it was through the grant writing process that she had to do it. To Apple. You know, that might be worth looking into.
Any other questions?
It was great.
Thank you
That's
very much.
awesome.
Thank you.
All the
This was
kids were, all the
fabulous.
kids were great.
Yeah.
I love having, I wish we could have kids here every time.
Thank
I
you.
know.
Thanks, Diane.
They're so much better than accountants, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
It's a good thing we did him first.
Yeah. Well, I told him to go back and tell Bruce that he had a full house. Okay, now my agenda's missing. Where did it go? You two, any chance? Did I come up with?
No, I've got two of them.
Oh, there we go.
He took
Okay.
yours.
All right, so now we're gonna go to a less fun thing, to the superintendent evaluation. You guys got this weekend, I don't know if you had a chance to look through, what I sent. In that note, I kind of gave you the background. So, you know, as you guys know, we've got new legal requirements, and then, we messed with something last year that didn't quite work. So as a starting point, we were looking at what we were doing for the teachers, and that's what this one sheet that has a B on it, this list of domains, and I don't know if Sharon wants to jump in. I'll try to explain my understanding of the teacher evaluation. So we've chosen this Charlotte Danielson model as what we're using with our teachers. It's one of the systems being piloted by the state. And it
What's it called again?
Charlotte Danielson? Charlotte Danielson. And it takes teacher work and identifies 4 domains. So there's actually another graphic and something Sharon showed me where it shows domain 1, the planning and preparation, is what you're doing before you're walking in the classroom. And then domain 2 is classroom environment. It's what you have set up, it's the things in your room. Domain 3 is instruction, what you're doing in your room. And domain 4 is your professional responsibilities, how you conduct yourself beyond the classroom. So that seemed like a reasonable, we wanted, again, we've talked before about having the teacher evaluation kind of layered, the principal on top of that, and other administrators and the superintendent, from the top. So we took that as a framework to try to do. And then Mike and Sharon came up with this format that you see here. We took his work and divided it into those 4 domains.
And there is an error. If you turn the page and you'll see 4 different categories, and it's highly effective, effective, minimally effective, and ineffective, and that third column should be.
It says NI, but it's
Should-
be
yeah.
MI. So there's, again, this is still ME. Well, yeah, minimally effective, right. Right. So this is
This is a
work in progress. So we were, yeah.
Yeah.
Just wanted to try to kind of bring to you where we were at this point and see if it made sense, if it's something you guys feel would be appropriate to work with. As I mentioned before, these different ratings, the highly effective, effective, minimally effective, and ineffective, are given to us by the new law. We do not have an option of what kind of rating we use. The new law does also require us over time to be incorporating weighting of different things, weighting of student achievement data. This tool that you're looking at in front of you doesn't have that weight in it. This year, we're not required to. And to have that weight, but we're going to have to start doing that, and that's gonna, I'm not exactly sure how we're gonna do that.
Let me just, the document that MASB had provided as a template for school boards is about that thick.
One we did last year.
And, I mean, no, I don't think you filled that particular one out, the one that they provided.
We took part of it.
You mean
But
We took part of it.
in the new format or the old format?
in the new format,
They did a new,
They, what we
Wait, you
filled,
didn't do it
what
when it
we,
was still old.
what we filled out, they've got a new tool. What we filled out in March was a portion of their new tool. So their new tool was even larger, and we felt that what it gave us was a lot of busy noise in it too. So that was the other goal here, was to try to make this make sense, but be compliant, with the law. We've had a history of enjoying to have some flexibility in what we say and how we conduct an evaluation, and at least initially, Mike and Sharon and I looked at this and felt this still gives you the opportunity to do so. But it's a little more organized in terms of, And then the other thing that we tried to do was, and again, we've been doing this with Mike's evaluation for years, is, the goals and the status of progress on the goals are the things that drive his performance or our, assessment of his performance. So there was an updated goal sheet in your packet, and you could see we just put the domains that apply to each goal, because some goals show up in a couple domains. So Mike would be over time giving us feedback on the progress on these goals, and then you knowing where it falls with respect to,
The criteria, or however the boxes are laid.
Right.
Yeah.
So this doesn't tell you, we're all making our own judgments about what's highly effective or minimally effective. And, it seems to be, again, specific enough to cover all areas of his work, but not so specific that you're getting into the minutia. But I just, we wanted to know if it made sense to you guys. Do you think this is a reasonable path to follow? Does it, again, make sense?
Well, it is a reasonable path for us to follow, because it's really kind of where we've always been. We just are putting it into particular categories now, correct?
Right, because we've really evaluated him against his goals. So, that's one of the things Mike and I talked about too. If we did these pieces of paper and there were goals that we aren't evaluating him on, that would be a mistake. And if we were evaluating against things for which he had no goal, that would be a mistake. This helps
but
you.
they all track, they really
Yes,
do.
it tracks,
There's
yeah.
no-
No. And we didn't, that wasn't because we, took the goals and cut them up and pasted them in here. These were,
We were on track to begin with.
we were on track to begin with, which is, of course, not a surprise, but.
So I'm, just in scoring this, you put a number in there, is that, or
Well,
do you just mark it?
I think
One of the-
that's something that we're gonna have to work through, because right now, the present evaluation that MASB had, it was all percentages across the top. And so as you start wading through that, and if you were doing the evaluation on somebody and you started assigning percentages, it becomes very cumbersome and very skewed when you start adding up all those numbers. And so what we tried to do with this is just, it's 4, 3, 2, 1 is what you're looking at, a point score, and then we're gonna score it that way.
so if you found him to be highly effective, you would put a 4 in highly, or you could check highly effective. And then when it's tallied as a 4.
Gotcha. If you got all fours, you get
You'd get a 90%.
56 points total.
Right, right.
I got it.
Now, that brings up, though, another point, and that is, actually, let me not go there yet. So what do you guys think about this and?
I've got a couple, I guess, questions on how we implement it or where we go with, a lot of this is still our qualitative assessment of Mike's performance.
Yes.
Or whoever the superintendent
yes,
is, I
yes.
should say.
Yes.
But some of it, I look at, for example, student achievement, students, teachers, and school buildings meet or exceed achievement targets on local, state, and national assessments. Now, something like that, I look at and I think, okay, well then, there has to be a quantitative target. And we need to have the quantitative data then if we're
Yes.
evaluating
Yes.
on
And
that.
you're
And
gonna
that's,
get, you're gonna get that.
Yes.
okay.
And we are getting all
You're gonna get that prior to you filling out that.
Because,
Most likely not be available to you until spring.
so, yeah, let's talk a little bit about the time, what we thought about timing wise. Well, because again, and that data, that's what the teachers are being held accountable to now. And so therefore, that's what our principals are being held accountable. So there is, there are gonna be some of that, and it's not in here because we don't have, have those numbers. But what Mike and I talked about was, and again, we've had these discussions before, but with the changing of the time of elections, we used to do his evaluation in March, and March just doesn't make any sense, especially if you need if we're required by law
may
to
not
evaluate
have
him on data that we don't have till spring. So, Mike and I kind of worked backwards from a point where we said it would make sense to do his evaluation at the end of June, as you're finishing a school year. And that therefore any goals that were to come of that, any things that needed improvement, you're discussing that and you're having time to put in effect a plan of how to address that by the beginning of the following school year. So then we worked back, we said, okay, if his evaluation's going to be at the last meeting of June, then 2 weeks before that, we need a report from him. No later than 2 weeks before that, we need a report from him on status of goals, data that needs to be incorporated in here. And so, in theory, the first meeting of June, we would get that report and this form for us all to work on. And the other thing he and I talked about was having a system of, at our first meeting in January, we get a mid-year report on the status of these goals. So in the middle of the year, we have a sense of where, which, really, Mike's done this all before. We've gotten period, and in a lot of ways, these discussion items we have every week or every meeting are showing us different goals. But by the beginning of the year, we'll get an initial reading of where we are. Now, that still, because we've had this qualitative approach, we don't have in place yet a specific guaranteed process of how does something get tallied. Yet, we're gonna be obliged to be doing some tallying. So that's another thing that we need to decide, how do we feel that's best handled? Are we handing these out with getting the goal report from Mike and turning it over to the personnel committee to hand in and tally? Or are we handing it over to reappointing somebody or asking the president? We would have options, reporting a separate committee. Personally, I think the personnel committee makes sense, but.
Personally, I think the president makes sense.
Well, that's true too. We can, either way, so.
Or just the chair of the personnel committee.
So anyway, so at some point, that somewhere in those, that was an evil eye, if you didn't notice that.
That was almost like, what's that group called? When we appoint somebody and they don't ever want to do it. The one with the.
Oh, ad hoc. No.
The
no,
one
no.
The
boring
one when
group.
no,
ISO.
when you're not at the
Yeah,
meeting and you get appointed to go.
yeah.
Bad shot is ISO, that's
No,
right.
no. Anyway, so this kind of seemed again like a timeline that worked, that still made sense with the school year, makes sense, when you have, if you're in a position where you're getting new board members in January, they'll have a little bit of an idea come June of what's going on. And still, again, gives this to be done at a point where, there could be feedback could be used for the plans for the following year. And at least again, Mike, stop me if I'm wrong, but he feels like this is something that if it turned out, we passed on to a future superintendent. And again, it makes sense. It's a reasonable approach from, and Sharon, I think, helped a lot with putting this together.
The timing on that then, I don't know if you know the answer to this, I should and I don't, but How's the timing on that if we look at a, June, late June evaluation on this? How's that work to our contract renewal timing and compensation evaluation for the superintendent? How does all that tie in together?
I think you just move everything back. I think you can do that. It was, I think as long as you establish it, Don, and I'm not sure positive on this, but I think you have to establish it up front that that's when the evaluation is going to take place, versus not having an evaluation and just disregarding it, and then March 31st rolls around and it's an automatic type of renewal type thing for a superintendent. So I think as long as it's stated and it's written somewhere, I think that's the proper protocol to follow.
We still have some of those discussions, those details that you and Kristen and I worked on in the summer are still outstanding.
But this particular document, I had MASB take a look at it, and they had some suggestions, so we did some tweaking there. And frankly, by the time we get it finalized, it's gotta go back to MASB for one more look. And then then we'll run it through Trune to make sure that it fits all the legislative issues that may be out there that maybe we missed on it. But we have some time on it, and, technically, we're not gonna do this until June now, but it would be nice to have it in place by January.
Well, I know we talked about, it seemed awful to me, the idea that you're working into a school year and you don't know how you're being evaluated on what you're doing this time,
Well,
but,
we
he
do have
does,
a
but.
document, in terms of the goals that you have evaluated me on in the
Yes.
past, so that's set there already, that's not the issue. It's the instrument right now, making sure that this is the one that everybody's comfortable with.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how you feel about it with respect to other administrators and
Well,
principals?
we're still working on, this is a work in progress, but frankly, central office people will use a similar type of document, and I won't be using the same for Steve. Steve's position is somewhat different than a lot of the other responsibilities around here, and Sharon's got some different responsibilities as well. And then we're gonna talk to the administrators about this at our next administrative meeting, principals meeting, I believe, this next week, so. Hopefully, it's a roadmap from, the superintendent down to the administrative team, down to our teacher, so that it's one seamless evaluation, and it's all tied. That's the goal of it.
So, things like student achievement and student attendance, graduation rate, at the teacher level, that would be for their classroom,
Well, that's more administrative, and,
student attendance is a mandatory
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
We didn't
It
add that.
doesn't- It seems like it doesn't have much, it doesn't make sense for us in this district because our student attendance is like 95%.
and our graduation
And our
rate is
graduation
very
rate
Is high.
is
well, and how do you
very
hold a
high.
third grade teacher accountable to graduation rate?
Well, you don't.
Yeah,
You
that's,
don't,
yeah.
so then that becomes not applicable, that's my bias, although Bart would say if you don't teach the fundamentals all the way up, you can't graduate, so.
We're all responsible
You can
for it.
hold people responsible for that, because if they're not doing their job at third grade or second grade or eighth grade, then most students won't be able to graduate. But I think districts who are not as high achieving districts or who have attendance issues, that's why that's mandated to be in there. So for us, we're effective, we're highly effective in that area because we need that or to see that goal.
But is there a right or wrong to that student attendance graduation rate? Where's the
Well,
cutoff?
I think the wrong is that if you have a graduation rate or an attendance rate and you see the slope going down, and you're not, and then you have a goal, what are we going to do?
Yeah, then you have to address it.
Improve student attendance, what are we gonna do to improve student achievement? So,
Sharon, in here, you were earlier talking about, there would be some targets,
there are targets.
and you said we'll get those later. Is that something that's gonna be, is that promulgated from a higher level? Or we as a district are gonna create our own targets?
You have to set your own targets based on your achievement levels, so I think as principals, we're gonna have to look at what are our targets identify, be more specific in the goals we set, which aren't specific right now. Not that we're going to achieve, but that we're going to improve, or we're going to do X or Y by this many percentage points, and this is how we're gonna do it. We presently do that in school improvement plans we submit to the state, but, we're gonna have to nail that down a little bit tighter.
So will that be different depending on the different principals, for instance?
Depends
Or
on
would-
their situations.
For
That's-
Judy and Diane, would theirs look the same, the targets look the same, or
If
would it?
their
It
buildings
depends
are-
on their buildings that their targets might be different?
Yes,
And then they're gonna change every year.
and they will change every year depending on what that looks like, so you're gonna have to, look at where you are, and then set achievement targets based on where you are, because we're all talking about improvement. It's, it's the era of improvement. So we're looking at, even with teachers, in terms of growth data for students, you're looking at where are your students? They could be very low, they could be, depending on your caseload of students or your class. And then you have to set improvement rates or targets based on that. So it could vary from teacher to teacher, classroom to classroom, principal to principal. Ultimately, though, I would think you hold us accountable for the entire district, meeting those targets, whatever they are. And if they don't meet them, why not? And that's very complicated. The whole student growth piece is hugely complicated. The state doesn't even know how they're going to.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing, too.
The state can't tell you how to do it yet.
Right, they've not given any guidance. They're piloting these different, so the chance, there's a possibility, we could decide we like this, we could fix it, we could get approval on it, and next year be told, oh, no, sorry, you have to do it this way.
They've changed the rules
Well,
now.
I will say that I think we're a little ahead of this with most other districts right now in terms of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're not really following any of the legislative law that's coming down the pipe. So I do think we're a little bit ahead of the curve on this, but I do think it's good, so.
I think following the law is good.
Yeah.
We should do that.
We should try that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard.
Especially when they don't know what they're doing.
Well, right.
Well, when it's a moving target.
And I've told you this, but our teachers
I
have
got a
agreed
different-
that
he got a
in
different-
2014, if they have passed their evaluation, will be 50% based on student growth.
Yes.
So the domains, the Daniel Silver you see here is half, it's half of the evaluation. The other half is the growth of their students. And this year, for the first time, we're really going to be looking at the data we have for each of our teachers, although we've looked at some of it, and try to see how that plays out. We have a complicated formula we're using, and hopefully an Excel spreadsheet that's gonna work for us, but, we haven't seen that collected yet. We haven't actually inputted it in and then looked at it and said, oh my gosh, Sharon Jones, it's only 60%, what does that mean? So, and then putting those two pieces together and say, how do you add 50? I mean, for you guys, it's easy, but for us in that arena, it's not as easy.
So you guys comfortable with this path then that we're,
That's good.
We have a little more work to do on it.
so we'll work on those and, get it fast. Maybe think a little bit more about how you think we should tally or summarize or whatever, what kind of preparation between starting the process and having the evaluation at the last meeting in June. All right? Anything else? All right. Thank you, everybody. Okay, it is time for board reports. Policy and Personnel Committee.
We have not met.
But we need to schedule a meeting.
Okay.
I thought going to schedule a meeting. All right, finance, facilities.
They met without me, so
Okay.
somebody else will have to.
We reported on that.
So you
Okay,
heard, you
okay.
basically heard.
About the audit.
Right.
Yes, it was the
Right.
audit.
Okay, so not since then.
You haven't met without me since then?
No.
That was the only time.
As far
we
as you
met
know.
without you. As far as we remember, we didn't.
We have not met.
Okay, thank you. Items from board members.
I've just got something real briefly. The ISOA group met, and it was interesting because one of the speakers that we had is Dr. Patricia Reeves, who's with the MASA, and she was there to talk about teacher, administrator, and superintendent evaluations and going through that specific organization, what they're working on for evaluations. And then we had Narda Murphy, who's the superintendent in Williamston, now is sitting in the position on our group that she comes as our superintendent's report, so she gave the roundtable discussion on what all the superintendents are up to in their specific group. And then I would just like to express a thanks to everybody who was able to attend the Excellence in Education dinner that we had a few weeks ago. And for those who weren't there, it was interesting. We started out the evening, the gentleman who was supposed to be speaking, due to Hurricane Sandy, was unable to be there. And so Stan Kogan actually got up and did the presentation. He found out that morning he was doing it, and he really did a fine job with it. So, thanks to all of you who were there. Anybody?
I'll just mention that I tried to represent you well at the delegate assembly at MASB, and I just want you to know it was the smoothest it's ever gone. There were
Really?
no questions. It just went right through. It was less than an hour.
Oh,
So-
wow. Well, then you get to go every year.
Yeah. It just must have been the company. So it was nice. It was a nice conference, and I enjoyed the presentation. The team did a great job.
I had some help. Great. All right. Anybody else? All right. We have 3 action items tonight. Anybody want any of them pulled?
I would like to have all something.
Okay.
If I can find on the agenda which number it is. 3? Yes, the approval of the HEA labor agreement, action item number 3.
So you move to poll number 3. Does anyone support?
Support.
Okay, all in favor of pulling number? We vote. We do vote on them. We do not vote. Okay, I'm sorry. My brain's it's 8:45 here. Okay, so we're pulling number 3. So let's talk about our 2 action items that are left. We have the approval of the minutes of the October 22nd, 2012 regular board meeting, and approval of the minutes of the October 22nd, 2012 closed session, which were on the table when you arrived.
I move approval of those action items.
Support?
All right. All in favor of approving action items 1 and 2, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Action items 1 and 2 are approved. Make sure that the closed session minutes, don't get them in your pile, and we'll get them back to Cheryl. Regarding action item 3, approval of the HEA labor agreement. John?
Well, I asked for it to be pulled just because it is a major contract, and I wanted to voice a few thoughts on it before we vote, although I do intend to vote in favor of it. I'd like to thank, of course, the negotiating teams on both sides, actually. I think, the administration negotiating team represented the district well, and from reports we received, I think the teachers did as well, represented their side. And I think, from what I could tell, all sides were reasonable on it. I have a great deal of respect, as I know all the board members do, for the teachers, the job they do, and a great deal of appreciation for them, which is why I'm going to vote in favor of this contract. It was a tough decision for me. I think it probably was for a lot of board members, only because of the financial limitations that we have. This budget has us dipping into the fund balance with structural things in place that are not going to have a rebounding next year, as far as I can see anyhow. So we're drawing down on our fund balance. which we have to have. Need that to cover spending, including spending until the school funds come in from the state. It is not a healthy situation to keep drawing down on that. And I think the solution that at least made it possible for me was making this a one-time payment, so that we're not building in and baking in more of a structural drawdown, because we can't just keep doing that. We appreciate our teachers, and I think everybody on this board wanted to find a way to help them, because the teachers too are facing increased expenses that have been baked into the whole compensation program, and they're facing some tough financial stuff where they're drawing down on their fund balance, if you will, by having to cover more expenses than they previously had to. And I recognize that, and I think our board members do as well. But still, the bottom line is, for me anyhow, is that we're drawing down on our balance. We don't have the ability to keep that compensation up, to keep making those payments, unless there's increased revenue coming into the district. So I think that made the situation tough. It is not a reflection on the teachers or dissatisfaction with them by any stretch of the imagination. That is a financial reality. And so I wanted to abuse my ability to make those comments, because I think it is important for everybody to realize that. And with that, actually, I would move for approval of the contract, and there may be more comments and discussion. I suppose we should have motion and second for discussion.
I'd be happy to second that motion.
Okay.
And, I echo many of the things that Don just said. I think, this is the product of collective bargaining. I think we all support collective bargaining. I do. And this is ultimately, I think, a great creative compromise. It does draw down on fund balance. I don't think it's something that, as Don said, it's not a place we can go very often, but I know that there's a lot of board support, that the employees of this district have made great sacrifices over the years, the last couple of years in particular, and I think we all felt like it was important to do something. And it was, I think, again, a kind of creative solution and allowed us to do something. So I support this and hope others do as well.
I would just like to add that always with Don and Rob's eloquent words explaining the positions, I absolutely am on board 100% with what they've had to say.
All right, well, with that, we've got motion and a second to approve action item number 3, the approval of the HCA labor agreement. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries and the labor agreement is approved. On to announcements. The November 26, 2012 regularly scheduled board meeting will be held here in the boardroom on Monday, November 22nd at 7 p.m. here. With that, would anyone care to move we adjourn?
You say the
It's the 26th.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
6th,
okay.
I'm sorry,
Monday the
26th.
Yep.
Monday, the 26th. You do not have to be here on Thanksgiving. It is Monday, the 26th.
I move that we adjourn.
Unless you bring your food.
Yeah, unless you bring your food.
second?
Second, all right, all in favor adjourning, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries, we're adjourned.
Hold on, you gotta get your take.
Oh, yeah.
Board members.